This is month 7 of the Color Vortex from Legit Kits. This is a block of the month, but it will actually be released as a full kit here soon. We've got our cover pages and our color sheets as usual. This is the first time I think we have 2 seams to assemble a block, but there's just 2 blocks out of the 4 that need assembling, so it's still a pretty easy month. And I'm happy to see a little bit of a color change, so these are nice like fall colors instead of the cool colors that we've been seeing. So I use the cut guide only as a rough reference. I am not worried about cutting exactly as they're laid out, exactly as they're diagrammed. They're definitely not to scale. They're not to be used as templates. So I just like to reference them to make sure that if there's like a large piece, maybe I cut that first, and then I can cut the smaller pieces out of the same fabric last and just make sure that there is room for the large piece out of that fabric. Some of these fabrics only have one piece cut out of them. So BO brown here is a good example. There's one piece. So I am just pulling from the top of my fabric pile. I'm just going to cut essentially in alphabetical order. You can cut however you like, however your brain wants you to, however you see fit, whatever is most economical or efficient for you. But for me, I just like in this case, in this setup with the block of the month where I just have these fabrics for each month, I just like to pull from the top of the stack. So I work through my tiny little fragments first, the 4.5 by 5.5 inch pieces. And I just pull from the top of the stack, turn to its cut guide, and glance at it to see if I should be using this fabric in a specific way. But in most cases, it doesn't make a huge difference how you cut, but cutting the largest piece first, as a rule, is just a good idea. So as I'm cutting, I'm really not worried about how precise or exact I'm being with my cutting. I'm really, just trying to get through this, and for me, time is money. So as I'm cutting, I will reference the cut guide and see how many pieces do I need to get out of this little bit of fabric. But other than that, if I only have 2 pieces to get out of this PK, I could just as easily cut it in half and be done and not worry about cutting to the exact shape. So like this PL, I'm just going to pin it to the back of the fabric. There's one piece of fabric I need to cut from it. I'll trim off the extra and save it. But a lot of times when I'm doing this block of the month, the savings is going to be so minimal that I'm just not going to spend the time to worry about cutting precisely and accurately, because you're not going to save that much, and your time is just as important as your materials. So don't fret too much about cutting so precisely and so exactly. You're going to have plenty of fabric, and if something happens and you do cut wrong, remember there is a fabric guarantee, so you can always contact Legit Kits and have them send you another piece of fabric. When you do this, you just need to mention what fabric or what pattern you're working on, what fabric you're out of, and maybe how many blocks you have left. If you're working on a large project and you only need enough fabric to complete one block, you don't need the whole cut of fabric. You just need enough to cut that one block out. So that being said, there's a fabric guarantee, but if you're generous with yourself the first time, don't be stingy with yourself, because if you're stingy, you might sew it wrong, or you might not have enough to work with when you do sew it, and then you're going to have to recut it anyway. So by cutting generously the first time, you're giving yourself a better chance of sewing successfully. So be generous with yourself the first time through. So like HR has one piece, I'm just going to pin HR to the back of the pattern piece. You just don't have to worry about cutting it exactly and accurately if there's only one piece coming from that fabric. Like here, TA, it's such a tiny piece that does come out of this piece of fabric. I will go ahead and cut it from the main piece, but I'm not going to cut pretty or neatly. I am just trying to get a piece of fabric off that I can sew with later. As I'm cutting, I'm pinning to the back of the pattern piece, so I'll pin each piece of fabric to its appropriately numbered piece. So when I go to sew, they're all kind of pinned to the back, and I just know which one is which because they're pinned to their relative spaces. So I'll continue cutting all of these out. I'm just referencing the cut guide. Like I said, I'm seeing, Where's my largest piece? I'll just cut that one first and then cut the smaller ones after that. So I'm going to continue cutting and just going down the stack of fabric by size until I've got everything cut out. Now sometimes I'll put the fabric under the pattern piece, but in a light colored fabric like this, sometimes it's nice to put it on top and fold it back to get yourself a crease. Because it's light, I can kind of see exactly where the pattern piece is, and then just cut outside of the crease line, and that's the piece of fabric that'll fit nicely to that piece. That's the last piece. So all of my fabric is cut out now for all of my pattern pieces, and we can take it to the sewing machine. So you've seen me do this a million times, and I will not pain you by going through the same stuff over and again. But you can watch the technique if you want, and maybe you can pick out some of the tips that I've shared in the past. Can you tell, what I'm doing and how I use my own tips and techniques all the time? This truly is how I sew, and I just kind of have it down to muscle memory at this point. So watch it if you want to, but feel free to skip ahead or not watch it at all, or go back and watch a different month if you want to. I hope you're making good progress on your own quilts. If you're behind, I completely get it, and hopefully this will inspire you to get back on track or to work on one of your months, and hopefully you'll get something out of the videos. Let me know if there's ever anything in particular you want to see. If you ever have a question, feel free to post it. I will absolutely try and answer it, and we're all in this together, and hopefully if you're behind, this is a good chance for you to get caught up. So I will let the music play and let you watch this, and then we'll work on some scrap blocks here in a bit too. Okay, I've got my blocks together and that is super exciting. Now I'm going to work on some scrap blocks. I'm just using some newsprint paper that I ordered off of Amazon. It has the handwriting, the blue lines on it, but that absolutely does not affect anything. It's still usable. You can print on this. I don't even need to print on it. I just want blocks that are roughly the same size. So I'm using a full sheet and then I'll trim it down later because a legit kit's block is a little bit smaller than a full page of paper. So I'm going to use my leftover fabric from this month and put it together in a scrap block. So in this case, I need to piece some pieces together so that I have the length I need in this block. And I really liked using my scraps this way. It was actually really satisfying. And then, of course, I used them to make the quilt dress, which was the big payoff in the end. But I have plans actually to use this kind of technique for a different project, and I think it's going to be a lot of fun. So at the Legit Kits booth, they now sell scrap packs of fabric. So it's the end cuts as they're cutting out the kits. They cut off the ends of the bolts and put them in bags, and they're essentially just like strips of fabric and their colors sorted. So I think it would be a lot of fun to use those in a project. In this case right here, what I'm doing is I wanted to make the best use of my fabric and the large pieces, but I want to actually sew this full piece of fabric on last, but I had to piece the other two pieces first. And so I folded it over where I want the seam to go, and then I can just fold it right sides together, sew right on that crease, and then trim off the extra and open it back up. So have fun watching the scrappy process. So with this, my month 7 is done. It feels really good to be catching back up and getting these done and getting some scrap blocks out of the extra. And I hope you will enjoy your process, and I cannot wait to see your quilts. I will see you soon.